Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to adopt a deeply calm, completely unbothered perspective. We're diving into the unshakable wisdom of a guy who somehow found absolute mental freedom while physically locked in chains. We really have to start with a pretty stark historical reality here. He was born with absolutely nothing. I mean, literally no freedom, no rights, zero choice over his own life or his own body. He was legally owned by another person, a notoriously cruel master named Epaphroditus. It's honestly hard for us to even wrap our heads around that level of powerlessness today, right? And yet, out of this absolute abyss of subjugation, Epictetus somehow became one of the most powerful and enduring philosophers to ever live. Now, if you really want to understand who we're dealing with, there's this one defining story. Remember, Epictetus didn't have some cozy study to write books in. He was property. So one day, his master decides to twist his leg, purely for amusement, just to prove he could. Epictetus doesn't scream, he doesn't beg. He just looks at him and says, matter-of-factly, "You are going to break it." Well, the master twists harder, and the bone completely snaps. And Epictetus, with absolutely zero panic, just looks at him and says, "Did I not tell you?" Just take a second and let that level of composure really sink in.
Part 1. The dichotomy of control.
Breaking that heavy silence from the story we just heard, you really have to ask yourself, how on earth is that kind of unnatural calm even possible? How do you not scream when your leg is being broken? Well, it was possible because he discovered a profound distinction, a psychological boundary that literally no master, no chain, and no physical torture could ever take from him. He called it the dichotomy of control. So on one side, you've got what's strictly within your control, your thoughts, your choices, your values, and your response to things. On the other side, totally outside your control, other people's opinions, the weather, your health, the past, the future. Getting this boundary deep into your bones is basically the beginning of all wisdom. And yet, ironically, most of us spend our whole lives doing the exact opposite. We try desperately to control all the outside stuff and completely ignore our own responses.
Part 2. The trap of modern anxiety. Think about your own life for a second. Think about the very last time you felt genuinely, deeply anxious. Really picture it in your head. What was it actually about? Was it someone's opinion of you? Maybe something that might happen tomorrow? A mistake somebody else made? Epictetus would look right at that source of anxiety and hit you with one ultimate diagnostic question. Is this within your control? Because when we obsess over what our boss thinks or some unchangeable event looming in the future, we are literally torturing ourselves over things we simply cannot dictate.
Here's his brilliantly simple flowchart for this. Step 1, if the answer is yes, it's in your control, then act. Focus completely and do something about it. Simple enough. Step 2, if the answer is no, it's outside your control, release it and listen. This is the part we really need to remember. Releasing what you can't control isn't defeat. It's definitely not a weakness. It's actually an act of supreme wisdom. Fighting what you cannot control isn't strength at all. It's just choosing to suffer. Part 3, the trap of approval. And this brings us to a specific trap that quietly destroys millions of people today. I'm talking about living your life for the approval of others. Epictetus actually said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Wow, that is an incredibly hard truth to swallow, isn't it? Because most of us are quietly terrified of being judged. We're so afraid of being laughed at that we shape our entire lives around what other people think. We pick careers that look impressive, we stay quiet when we know we should speak up, and slowly, without even noticing, we hand the steering wheel of our lives over to people whose opinions we're probably going to completely forget in 10 years anyway. Epictetus is saying, just stop. Their opinion isn't in your control, but your response to it absolutely is. Part 4. Playing your role. To counter this whole fear of judgment, he kept coming back to one core concept, playing your role well. He thought of life kind of like a play. The catch, you don't get to pick your starting role. You might be born poor, or sick, or into some really extreme difficulties. So picture this. You could have a slave who acts with incredible nobility, or an emperor who just plays his role terribly. You can't change the script the universe handed you, but you absolutely can play that role with total honesty, incredible dignity, and full presence. A person with nothing who lives with integrity is way wealthier than an emperor who has everything but forgot what actually matters. And remember, Epictetus was given a role literally no one would ever choose, yet he played it better than almost anyone in history. Part 5. The reserve clause. You know, another massive source of our daily friction is that most of our pain doesn't actually come from what happens to us. It comes from that crushing, heartbreaking gap between our expectations and reality. To close that gap, he used a practice called the reserve clause. Basically, it means silently adding the words, if it is meant to be, before any plan, any hope, or any goal. We expect the job to work out or the relationship to last forever, and when it doesn't, we suffer. But the reserve clause isn't some excuse to slack off. It's a deliberate psychological tool. It reminds us to bring our absolute full effort and our whole heart to everything we do while completely, utterly releasing the uncontrollable outcome.
Part 6. Finding True Mental Freedom. Zooming out a bit, all of these practices lead to his most powerful revelation. And keep the source in mind here. These next words are spoken by a man who legally couldn't walk away, couldn't speak freely, and couldn't choose his own path. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Just think about the sheer weight of that statement coming from a slave. You can be physically free today, you can travel, buy whatever you want, and still be entirely mentally enslaved. Enslaved to your anxiety, to your ego, to what random strangers think of you. On the flip side, you can be physically chained, like he was, and still be the freest person in the room. Because true freedom, it's a mind that is solely yours. Finally, Part 7. The Stolen Moments. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about the stolen moments in your own life. What worry, what opinion, or what projected outcome are you currently carrying around that was never actually yours to carry in the first place? Every single moment you spend fighting the unchangeable is a moment literally stolen from the one thing you can actually build, your own character. So, what would it feel like to truly let it go? If you stopped fighting the wrong battle today, what could you finally build?